Beautiful. My talk, of course, is all about the presence, and honestly, I could not talk about this, especially given our affirmation, without at least starting with the events of Friday and finding out how you all are doing with that grief, with that sadness. I just want to tell you that what my process was. I was getting my hair done, and my hairdresser's husband called her and said, "You need to listen to the news. This horrible thing has happened where all these children have been shot." And I was reading, because we do not believe in coincidence, we know. I was reading a book by Anita Moorjani called Dying to Be Me. This is a fabulous book. You'll hear more about it next year, but I just wanted to say where I was when this happened. I was reading this book, and what this young woman said about her near-death experience was that after it, she changed so remarkably. She changed because she was filled with compassion and love all the time, no exceptions. She didn't blame anyone for anything. And I just happened to be on the section, and I'm not going to read it, but on the section that she said she'd even found it hard to be with friends when they were talking about acts of terror and things like that, that people would be afraid of, and she could not join in that place because she had such a great compassion for all of life, for everything and everyone. And it was so interesting because that's where I was until I turned the television on. And then when I saw exactly what had happened and saw the president and saw as probably most of you did too, the horror of it that wouldn't get out of my mind. So I'm here this morning saying we do not need to keep that in our minds. We do not need to horrify ourselves. We are the ones that need to bring the light into every situation, including the unthinkable. We are the ones that need to see that there's good everywhere, even when we can't see it. We are the ones that need to say, yes, so much compassion for those that were lost and for the families that remain, and also for the family of the shooter, for his father and brother that remain in the community. So much compassion. And we can do it by bringing in our spiritual knowing. I've been reading, Reverend Bruce loaned me a book by William Hornaday, who was one of Ernest Holmes' proteges. He studied with Holmes, and they went walking together and talking, and so he's got all these wonderful stories of Ernest Holmes. And the book is just filled with the way Ernest would just simply be with life, loving life, the way it was. And when he spoke his word, when he prayed, he didn't do it every day at 5 o'clock. He did it once. He did it once. And a story in the book was this. They were going on one of their walks, and they went past a house, and it was in really disrepair, pretty badly looked after. One of the windows had cardboard in it instead of glass, and their child outside was very dirty and looked like she'd just been crying, and the mother was not well dressed. And Ernest said to Bill, "We need to do some work here." And so they stopped in the middle of the sidewalk and they did some work. That means spiritual prayer. They did prayer. And Ernest would start the prayer, and then he would go into the silence, and in his mind, he would finish it. And when he was done, he'd say, "And so it is," and off they'd go. Bill said, they gathered quite a group of people because no one understood what he was doing, but he said, there's only one family. And this house belongs to one of us. And then he said, Bill said, well, maybe it's the landlord. And he said, well, the landlord's part of our family too. So he did this work, and then Bill went by in a few weeks, and nothing had changed. Everything was the same. So he went to Ernest and he said, Dr. Holmes, I went by the house today and it doesn't look like anything's changed. Maybe you should treat again. Do the affirmative prayer again. And Ernest looked at him and he said, Bill, you haven't quite got it yet, have you? When I did my work, I got an inner yes. I knew it was complete. I knew it was done. I didn't need to do it any longer. I knew it was complete. I knew it was done. I didn't need to do that prayer again. He said, trust the process. So a few more weeks went by, and now they're looking after this place. It's someone's putting a new roof on it, and there's some activity there, and the child's got clean clothes on and looks like she's been washed, and the mother is busy doing something inside. He could see this all through the windows. Something was happening. Now, we might say, well, that's coincidence. Or we might believe that this is the result of prayer, which it is. And there might be some time between that which we claim and that which we experience. But when we are certain about it, and this is kind of a tricky thing because it's not a mental certainty only. It's a deep knowingness. When you're in meditation, when you're in a quiet place, and you know and know that you know, that's what I'm talking about. That kind of certainty. It's like you all know your names. No one could say, oh, you're not really Joan, you're not really Judy. You know your name. That's the kind of knowingness that I'm talking about. And that's the kind of knowingness that I'm asking us to bring to this situation on Friday from this moment on. On our Facebook, Julie, now, see if I can get caught up to myself. I think it got distorted, Julie, but so this, in the light, the divine presence is within. Need to remember for myself and everyone else. No exception. There's no place where light is not. Light is everywhere. Julie Isola. This picture wrote, life is eternal, this we know, and yet today our hearts are. And certainly that was the next place I went, a feeling of deep grief and pain for those families and for those innocent ones not growing up to have their own. And because we know that eternal, we know that they are well. Every adult, every child. And what we hold our light to is for the healing for the people left behind, for that whole school and all of the kids that come back to school. So that what we need to know is that there's something within each one of them that's moving through them right now. And it's good and good only. Dr. David Alt, how many of you don't know who he is? Oh, good. Dr. David Alt was, before ministry, he's got a great big ministry in Atlanta, Georgia now. But before ministry, he was a singer and composer, and he was part of a group called Alliance that went everywhere with Louise Hay and sang these wonderful New Thought songs. Just a fabulous, fabulous guy. And he posted on Facebook something I would like to read to you, because this to me this is the essence. This is where I need to go so that I don't go into judgment or blame, but rather recognize that we're all one in this. He said, there are no their children. It is our children. And then he said, there is no their mental illness. It is our mental illness. This is not isolated. This is another effect from a long-standing cause. Another effect from a long-standing cause. So not their children, our children. And I love this symbol of these children around this heart. And so we bring our inner child today so that life can continue on. He said this, separation of any kind is the ogre we will continue to feed, whether it is the Christians thinking they are righteously superior over the Muslims or the Muslims over the Christians. Whether it is Israel and Palestine, gay and straight, black and white, even men and women. It is you against me and me against you. It all is separation, proudly broadcasting its ignorance. Proudly broadcasting its ignorance through our political and social systems, and ignorance that fuels our fears. When we refuse to accept anything that might be different than our front porch comfort zone. There's my version of a front porch comfort zone. That was a great image for me. The greatest acts of hypocrisy are committed when any of us saddle up and ride our high horses of superiority or grovel in the gutters of our own self-loathing. And think about it, what we tend to do is one or the other. And really, it's neither is correct. What is correct is to say there's only one life, and we're all in it. We're all of it. We are it. So this poor guy is here. It says, beneath contempt and beyond redemption. And often that's sometimes how we feel about ourselves. And that voice in our mind that beats us for being simply human you need to simply tell it, it's okay. You can be quiet now. All is well. We must accept that each and every breathing soul is equally valuable, or we are all pulling triggers. Can we get to that place? Each and every human soul is valuable. And it starts with you. It starts right where you are. You're the value. Now, I have a belief that one of the reasons that these kinds of things are taking place more right now is because we've given ourselves permission as a species to give our power away, to not be accountable or responsible for our lives. Well, after all, if the world is going to end next whatever day of the week it is, then why would we want to continue being responsible? And don't you see how that very idea, ridiculous as it is, can feed people's then it doesn't matter what I do. It matters what you do. Who you are is a different, you make a difference. You're a difference maker. Right now you are. Right now. And that's how we let our light shine. I'm not telling you not to grieve, but I'm telling you that there is a time to finish grieving, to stop and say, okay. You know, I told all of my class this. My first teacher was going through a really hard time when she first began her real work as a minister. Her ex-husband had divorced her and within a month had married someone else, and they were co-pastors together. And he would introduce this other woman, and you know sometimes you're not here at church every week, as my wife, and they're all saying, but your wife is Arlene, and you called her Diane. Well, his new wife is Diane. It was pretty interesting. And she said she gave herself permission to have what she called a conscious nervous breakdown. And what she did was she gave herself permission to feel the pain, but only for an hour a day. And she set her timer. And when that timer went off, she got out of bed, got dressed, and went to work. And maybe that's what we need to do. Give ourselves permission to feel it, and then use these wonderful minds, our wonderful consciousness to move on. There's a fabulous website that I stumbled across in the last couple of days. And it's a website that is filled with inspiration. It's Mark, M-A-R-C, and somebody, and I'm sorry I didn't pay attention to who the other person was, but if you just type in Google Stories of Inspiration, you will come up with this website. It is amazing. And he began this Stories of Inspiration. They're all short little clips about good that people are doing, about good, things that make us feel good. And one of them came from a nurse or an attendant in a nursing home who said, this is the 14th day in a row the grandson of one of my Alzheimer's patients was here. He came because I told him 2 weeks ago that the only time I see his grandmother smile is when he's visiting on Sunday. She made a difference. She made a difference by telling this boy, your grandmother loves to see you so much. She smiles when you're here. And it hasn't any of the other days of the week. So many little clips, little stories of people doing good, of people loving people. However many there are here today, there's that many stories in this room of people helping people, of people inspiring other people. Instead of being isolated, instead of feeling separate, if you really knew that you are one with all the people in this room, perhaps you could share some of that inspiration with them. And when you get who you are, you truly fall in love for the very first time. And it's not with someone outside yourself, it's with yourself. You truly fall in love. And when you love yourself and cherish yourself, you speak well of yourself. And from that place, you see the world as it really is, filled with this divine presence. And you don't give up on anybody or anything. Ernest Holmes was a gardener as well as being a wonderful speaker. And he would go and talk to the trees on their walk and say, oh, I see they're not looking after you, etc. And those of you who've been to Founders Church know there's a meditation garden there. And the meditation garden in it has 3 trees. Just before they were going to move in, the gardener was taking out one of those trees because it was dying. It was pretty well dead, looked lifeless. And Ernest said, what are you doing? And then he talked to the tree. He said, listen, you won't do any better anywhere else. This is a meditation garden. You'll be surrounded by love. You'll be surrounded by consciousness. You will flourish here. He ordered the gardener to put that tree back in the ground. And do you know today, it's the tallest of those 3 trees. It's the tallest, most healthy, because it received that love. We're not separate. We're connected. If your heart is still hurting, either because of the Sandy Hook shootings or for any reason, I really encourage you to see a practitioner after service. That's what we're there for. I really encourage you to let your light shine, and that's what they'll help you do. It's our gift to you on Sunday, and it only takes a couple of minutes. How many of you have never stopped at a practitioner? Okay. So it's so easy to do. They sit in the back, one in the meditation room. They keep whatever is going on with you absolutely confidential. The presence is within you now. The presence is within me now. And that same presence is in absolutely everyone that you can think of. So, speak well of yourself, for truly you're housing that you are the temple of the living Spirit. Speak well of others, for there too is the presence of good. And so it is. Namaste.